Your business isn't working because of one of these two reasons. And this is one of those teachings where, if applied correctly, you would see the result instantly. Yes, there are some which takes time. There are some which are subject to the law of process. In fact, I'm a man of process myself. There are concepts of which I teach which takes time. But this is very unique. If you understand and apply correctly, you would see the immediate results now. One of the reasons you should pay attention very keenly is because small things leads to big things. I made a video recently on the Pareto principle and how 20% of action controls 80% of your consequence. There I expound that the small things you do leads to the big outcome. The small learning, the small time you took in building your confidence, learning how to speak, ultimately got you into a position where you could network, now attracting millions of dollars, now doing business way beyond the average man's salary. So that small effort led to a completely different outcome. So check that out. I'll link it at the end of this video. But another reason you should pay attention very keenly is we bring unique solutions as touching life problems. We do not consult other people's content for the sole purpose of creation. Every single thing you learn today was built from the back of experience and will be distilled with logical examples for your learning. If I had a millionaire who would sit and speak and teach me how to do XYZ, then perhaps I would have been far ahead. So you guys are extremely lucky in that regard. Without further ado, let's get into tonight's discourse. The first thing you need to understand, the first reason your business fails is the name of your business. The name of your business sucks. This problem is pertinent to Africans. We want our business to bear our names. I'm so glad we've gotten rid of the XYZ and Sons Limited or XYZ Okorie and Sons partnership. I'm so glad we've gotten rid of that aspect of business. But in this day and age of insanity, where people will do every and anything to have themselves tattoo their name, anything in order to become famous, they would get naked, they would prank, they would back at people's children, all to be famous. And I've stated here about the subconscious mind and how it operates, how it compels your action to produce results. So if subconsciously you want to be famous, it's most likely that that drive would compel you to name your business after you. We are not discussing the subconscious, but the name of your business sucks. It sucks. In this day and age, like I just stated, humans do things because of status. People do things that aggrandizes their status. So if they are purchasing a product or a service, they want to be able to show this thing off. Unfortunately, your name is not Lamborghini, your name is not Ferrari, your name is Ibuku or Okorie or something that doesn't connote to status. Now, there is a place where you can turn your last name into an asset. Of course, there is that aspect of life. However, sir, at the infancy of your career, you should understand, in today's day and age, people buy things to increase their status, not just for consumption. Please understand, nobody buys $1,000 bag to store books. Nobody does that. People buy things to increase their status. So if your brand has a shitty name, it's going to get less and less patronage. That's a mindset switch there in and of itself for you to understand that perceptual value now rules over actual value. Balenciaga is willing to sell ripped jeans from the waist down to the knees, down to the sole of your feet for $1,000, and people would still buy. Is that attire valuable in and of itself? Of course not, but it's the perception, the narrative created behind it that makes it sell. If there's any point you get from this first concept, perception now precedes actual value. Do you think brands, Rolexes, and all of these big brands would spend hundreds of millions of dollars in packaging? They understand the psychology of humans, that we want something we can unbox. We want something at the process of purchase, we can post it online, and it somehow increases our status. It somehow deposits wealth. In fact, the content now in Africa is there's something called New Age XYZ. So for instance, New Age donut sellers, they come in the Mercedes, they package the donuts so well that you almost lose your mind. They professionalize, including sewing now. Sewing used to be a poor man's job. And anybody who has lived long enough would nod their head in agreement that sewing used to be a poor man's job. Barbing used to be a poor man's job. It's no longer like that. So the packaging, the branding behind it, the name, the ambience, the service is what gives it value. So as a reason of this discourse, most of you might consider changing Ibuku and removing whatever traditional name. In fact, at the mention of your product, it almost sounds like an incantation. Like a witch is trying to concoct some mystery. That's how your brand sounds. So that's the first aspect. The second aspect of naming is when you develop the brand so much that the name becomes attached to the service. I'll give you an example. Growing up as a child, there was this particular toothpaste which we called toothpaste. I'm going to say the name for clarity. I'm not being sponsored. This is not me running ads. But previously, as a child, we used to call Close-Up toothpaste. Or we used to call toothpaste Close-Up. So when you go to the store, you said, give me Close-Up. Give me Close-Up. So they so developed themselves, they so advertised the product that we associated the brand with the service. Most of you are not in the same country as I. Give me a minute. I need to change something. My apologies. This was very, very unprofessional. I should have done this before recording. So let's get back. So most of you are not in the same country as I. So I will give a global example. Take Airbnb for instance. They have so developed themselves. Mind you, Airbnb is not the name of a service. It's an actual company. But it has so been attached to a service that the name now becomes the service. Even if you receive... Now, what is an Airbnb? It's an intermediary between a property owner and someone looking to rent. So even if you receive that service from somewhere else, you still call it Airbnb. Oh, I just Airbnb'd an apartment. Oh, I just did this. Oh, I just Airbnb. Yeah, when we get there, we'll look for an Airbnb. So they've so ingrained themselves in that service it becomes attached to their name. I've had this debate on multiple boards, and the only way to become a credible competitor to Airbnb is if you have a colloquial name, if you have a name that can be familiar to the service, if you have a name that once said associate the product with the service, that becomes the height of power. So naming is not just limited to the first point, which is the aggrandizement of status. It also falls under the concept of the association with service. Detergent as a child, we don't call it detergent. We used to call it Omo. Omo. That's all we knew. Omo. I want to get Omo. So focus on those two concepts. Now we move to number two. Number two, which is pricing. And this pricing in and of itself has an array of components. The first one you have to look at in pricing is high price. So let's talk about low price. We move to high price. Low price has been a strategy adopted by various competitors. So you charge low, attract a lot of customers, and once you have a sustainable clientele base, you raise it to normal standard. That has been a strategy proven useful over the years. However, the dynamic of life is changing. People need social proof. In the days of old, we use things solely for consumption. We use things solely for the value. There was nowhere like social media. There was nowhere where you could show off your XYZ. So you bought things because you needed them. It's no longer like that. So once you lower price, first of all, it signals low quality. Secondly, the kind of people who would use that product is most likely the kind that will cause trouble. When I started NSC management, we reduced price and the quality of clienteles. So NSC management is a company that manages rental properties. So the quality of clients at the time were stressful, they complained, there was a subconscious calculation of our expenses. So for instance, if we took 5% out of their rental income, they would ensure we spend that 5% either in repairs, legal battles, transportation. They would ensure that almost half or more of the check goes towards activities pertaining to them. And that is a limited mindset in and of itself, because poor people think in terms of what I give, while rich people think in terms of what I receive. And that was a mistake I made at the infancy of my career. Maybe I'll do a video where I'm just going over a lot of mistakes, the problems, the challenges I face on my ascension towards success. Let me give you one. I rented a cheap apartment and it was terrible. Terrible in the sense that I'm a transformed individual. I already know what value looks like. So the mindset behind renting a cheap apartment, of course, frugality is one of it. Secondly, to leave many layers below my true worth, which is another good point. However, I lived so many layers such that the environment wasn't conducive for things like this. The environment was noisy. There were a lot of security issues. The kind and quality of individuals you meet, it forces you to go down, to conform, or face isolation. So there are certain quality of content, there are certain quality of information that could not be given online, because there's no way you come on the internet and say I did this and I did that whilst in a crappy apartment. So security is compromised in and of itself. Not looking at it from the standpoint of faking it till you make it. But once you release certain information, you're going to get robbed. You are going to get robbed. They would rob you. As easy as that. So there are a lot of mistakes I made along the way, and I'm going in depth because this information in and of itself is nuanced. I understand I have a very large platform. Trying to not explain it in depth. For some people, they're already excited. This appeals to the lust of living in places you cannot afford. This appeals to the lust of skipping process, the desire to enjoy wealth without the process, without the backing, without the hedge against downfall. That's not the discourse. But lowering your price attracts a certain quality of people. So you have to be very careful when you do this. Once you've gotten to a point where you've built a certain clientele base, it is best to limit your service to appeal to the quality of people you'd like to deal with. So that's one. Another component of pricing is discounts. Never give discounts. Never give discounts. If you give discounts, you know how the human mind works. The next time he wants to purchase, he will think twice. He would rather go through another route because he feels like he's getting or he's overpaying for X. Instead of giving discounts, add value to the product. So if this watch initially cost $1 or $2 for simplicity of the math, and it's a 50% off promo, instead of going that route in an attempt to sell more watches, what would I do? Keep it at $2, but add an extra strap that costs maybe 50 cents or the 50% equivalent of the initial price. That way, you sell more watches, yet retaining customer trust. Because humans, whenever they purchase something, there's this desire, even if they bargained, that they could do more. Think of a deal, a business deal, a contract. You negotiate for X amount. The contractor, oh, you're the contractor. The recipient finally agrees. You would go back feeling to yourself, had I pressed him more, the price would have reduced. Exactly. So the human mind always seeks way to conserve finances. Again, this is a tendency associated with the poor. The poor think in terms of what they give. The rich think in terms of what they receive. It's a different mindset. So I'm willing to pay less while ignoring the difficulties that comes with that environment. Unfortunately, a rich man would have considered the negativities and problems associated with the poor environment, saving him the stress. So don't give discounts. Add value to the product. And what I'm saying would get me a lot of backlash. Oh, why are you saying what of this case study? And that's the problem with people. They're not here to learn. They're here to debate. Humans, their initial response to things they disagree with is an evaluation or judgment. Sometimes people listen with the desire to respond, not to understand. And as Buddha famously put it, when humans get to the point where they listen with a sympathetic desire to understand, not to respond, then we would advance as species. Paraphrasing, something along that lines. So you can come with 1,000 case studies that proves me wrong. I'm telling you, your case studies are exceptions. Exceptions do not disprove the rule. Generalization is how the world functions on. If I say to you, is beans high in protein? Is it considered a proteinous meal? You say yes. I go, does that mean beans lacks other nutrients? Exactly. But yet you prioritize the protein over the other nutrients because it is high in protein. The high protein classifies and describes the object, although there are nutrients that do so, but the nutrients are not sufficient enough to gain a stake as touching a description. The same thing with the S&P 500. Recently, Apple was knocked down from number 1 and Nvidia taking most of the share as touching that composite. So although they have 500 companies under that index, one is Nvidia. Nvidia takes more percentage than the others. Does that mean others don't exist? No, but their market cap does not meet the requirement to be number 1. The point I'm trying to highlight is your case studies might exist, but in general, this is what works. Please understand, your case studies might exist, but in general, this is what works. You can either sit down there and learn or sit down there and complain while your business declines. So we talk about discounts, we talk about low prices. Let's talk about high price. If there's a thread woven across the fabric of this discourse, it is we live in a society that will do anything, I'm talking about anything, to increase their social standing. The human mind, like I said, associates quality with high price. For this to cost this much, it must be somehow worth it. I'll share an experience that happened recently. I went to the store to get something for my facials, something along that line. And I saw 2 products. I will not bring it here because of obvious reasons. So I saw 2 products. Product A costs $1 for simplicity of the math. Product B costs $1.50. Although I've been using product A, something in me wanted to buy product B, and they looked almost identical. But something in me wanted to get product B. Please understand, I'm being as vulnerable as possible with you, as something in me wanted to buy product B. Why? Pricing. For you to cost more, it means it might be somehow worth it. So do not feel guilty for increasing prices of your product or service. And for some, in fact, I was having this discourse with a friend of mine. The reason he didn't want to raise price was a religious reason. Will people be able to afford it? As ridiculous as that sounds, most people in my situation or in my level would dismiss it or try to hold all the logic of Socrates at him. But as a leader, you need to relate to people in accordance to their level. Not everybody is smart, not everyone is charismatic, not everyone has the privilege to pay the price to develop their intellect, to walk in accordance with the Spirit of God, to maximize the cave of Adullam, to prepare and put in pressure, put in coal inside that fire of their intellect. Not everybody was willing to pay that price. Some utilized their college days, some did not. Some partied it away, some drank booze, some followed women. So it's not everybody who paid the price as touching life and destiny. I said to him, Mark, does raising the price means your church gets a bigger tithe check? And you can see the way his eyes lit up and goes, yeah, yeah, yeah. And that was how he raised price. To relate to people in accordance to their level. I tell my staff every single time. I was in a meeting with them recently. After the preamble, I said, there are certain things I cannot tell you out of wisdom, because some of you are not developed enough to receive that information. You would consider it pride or arrogance. For instance, if I'm on the latest device, the latest Apple device, and I'm on it constantly, to you he will say, ever since he got this phone, he has always been on it, he's flaunting the device. But to me, I'm a senior executive. I need a device that is active and up to date. I need a device that can run up to 10, 15 apps with a large enough space to accommodate every single thing I do. I need an app that would not hang. I need a phone that would accommodate my busy schedule. So that's my mindset. Whereas if you take that reality to a more advanced group, where every single person is on the latest device as a reason of this consciousness, nobody would notice. It's like everybody's putting on a shirt. Okay? That's not a basis of discussion. This is what Jesus meant by, I have many things to tell you, but ye is not able to bear. However, yes, we relate to people in accordance to their transformation. The Bible famously puts it, you give milk to children and strong meat to men. Giving a child strong meat, you might likely kill that child. He chokes on it. He doesn't have the capacity to engage in that nutrient, although good. So even good things can kill, by this illustration. So in summary, your name kills your business. The pricing kills your business for all of the components and reasons I've stated. Also, something I want you to keep in mind is, I'm sure you enjoyed yourself. I'm sure you've seen that we bring unique concepts as touching life problems. We do not consult other people's experience. In fact, anything I learn, any logical concept, as wonderful and as logical as it sounds, I'm the first guinea pig. I try it on myself, and upon production of results, then I share. There are many things I would like to tell you, but the requisite level of results to back up that claim is non-existent, so we hold off. As always, my friends, a pleasure speaking to you. I'll see you in the next one.